The Mayo Experience.
That Mayo Experience. That Mayo Experience. That Mayo Experience. Experience.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Pat Mayo Experience. I'm Pat. No, I'm not. I'm Garion Thorne. But we're talking about baseball today, so we don't really need Pat on this episode of the show. Although I'm sure you'll let me know in the comments section about how my interim basis as the host of the Pat Mayo Experience is truly going. Maybe you'll have more love, as I do, for my guest on today's show, that being of Fantrax of The Athletic, one Christopher Meaney. Chris, how's it going, man?
It's going great. Yeah, no Pat. Deserves some time off. Chill, listen to some baseball.
He wouldn't bring a lot to this conversation.
He doesn't
anyway.
want to talk baseball. No,
Great fantasy baseball writer.
Yes,
in the past.
Yes, for sure. And I will love taking part in his his home league again, the PME.
Although, thank God he made that a snake draft.
Yes,
because that auction was long and nuts.
I remember the first time it was like 6.5 hours long.
I know.
It's like, wow. I mean, I love auctions, but you really have to.
But a 16-man auction is...
You have to be invested. You need some breaks, some sig breaks for Mayo and his crew.
People, yep.
Yeah, for his crew. But yeah, no, happy to be here, man. Happy to talk baseball, and it's here. It's basically here now. We're still waiting on a couple of guys to sign, but it's here.
I remember that was the first big moment where I had to go to my girlfriend and sort of explain just how deranged I was about playing fantasy baseball. Yeah. Just explaining to someone who doesn't care or doesn't play fantasy sports. So what we do is we sit down in a room for 6.5 hours and bid single dollar increments on 350 baseball players.
Oh, yeah.
It's like,
good times.
Is that what you do for fun?
Well, the League of Leagues, who Pat and I obviously are taking part. I think we came second in baseball. Jonah, of course, came first.
That's fair.
That's fair. That's going
to
happen.
You
come second, you basically win. That was like 11 hour draft. Because
the first one was in Vegas, though. At the very least.
The first one was Vegas. I missed out on that when I was from home, but Pat was there. But yeah, I mean, you do baseball, you do basketball, and you do football. You're invested. It's fun. It's all right.
Well, we're not here to talk about our various draft experiences, although they might come up. Who knows? What we are here to do today is to talk about some risers, some ADP risers. Now, full disclosure, this is early February. We don't really have a ton of data as to who's been rising in this year's draft. So what we thought we would do to kind of dip our toe in the water of the ADP pool is talk about players who are suddenly top 100 picks by NFBC ADP, who were nowhere near that level last season, or maybe weren't even draft eligible or on your draft board last season. So are you willing to pay premium prices for players, generally speaking, coming off career best seasons? So we're here to kind of give you a temperature, maybe risk assessment is a better way to put it, for some of these very interesting names inside the top 100. And if you want to get in on the fun and get yourself 20 DK dollars, what you have to do is like this episode. Then in the comment section below on YouTube, leave us your DK handle and tell us which one of these guys you trust the least. Who is your biggest bust coming off a career year or who has suddenly got this high ADP? Who do you just not trust at all? And maybe there's guys that Chris doesn't trust at all. I've got a few names that I'm a little wishy-washy on.
There's a couple on here we'll get to.
Well, we'll start with maybe the most, I don't know if I want to say complicated, but it's always hard to talk about young players because we don't have that much of a sample. So for all we know, Juan Soto is the greatest baseball player in the world.
Especially if your old man's a Nationals fan. He'll text you every single day about how good this kid is.
Yeah. I mean, you could even say that Juan Soto's emergence as a 19-year-old hitter last season, one of the reasons the Nationals are like, yeah, Bryce Harper, you go find yourself a $300 million contract somewhere else, because this guy was amazing, and all of a sudden, he's picked 31.3 in NFBC drafts. Now, I will say, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who has yet to take a major league plate appearance and is someone we know will not be playing in April for the Toronto Blue Jays, he's only going 9 picks later. Yeah. So there are ways to justify this ADP, obviously. He's outfielder number 12, if you want to go by that particular ranking, but was just so good last season. Among players with 450 plate appearances in 2018, a 146 WRC plus that was tied with Jose Ramirez, who's the third overall player in drafts, a 392 WOBA, which was the 7th best in all of baseball. How much are you trusting the kid?
I think he's going to be phenomenal. I think he's great. my one problem is I feel like he's even going a little bit earlier in this, Gary. And I feel like some of the drafts that I've done, I haven't end up with them. They get a little excited. I'm like, I wanted Soto. I know if I want him, I got to take him. Like, depending on where you are in the draft, like in the second round, you just got to do it because you know by the time it gets back to you, he's going to be gone. Like, very impressive stuff. You mentioned a lot of great stats there as a hitter, and the fact that he already has 495 plate appearances as a 20-year-old is great. And the fact that he only struck out 20% of the time, he's walking double-digit percent of the time. Like, all of that is just terrific. Like, he's just his eye is incredible. His eye is absolutely incredible. Crazy. Yeah, it really is. Like, I don't think he's going to hit 40, 45 home runs. I think he's still like maybe a 30 home run guy. Like, I don't know how much more I'm projecting from him in his first full season in the bigs, but there's not a lot of negative. I mean, yeah, no speed, 5 stolen bases, but over the full course of a year, maybe he gets to double digits. I'm not saying he can't. Like, he can run. Like, I'm a little cautious. I'm a little cautious of him being my second round pick. That's it.
I would agree with that.
Late third, fine. It's just, I know, like, everyone loves prospects. Everyone loves kids. And he's been on full display. Like, some of the stuff that he did as a teenager is off the charts. It's things that have never been done before. So, like, it's warranted. It's just, I'd rather take a little bit more safety, I think, with my second pick. Again, if he's going to fall to third, I'm obviously fine with it. It's tough to knock this guy. Yeah. It really is.
I mean, there's a way to build a case against him from a fantasy perspective, but to do it, I almost have to do the thing that we always do with Christian Yelich, which is to preface this whole debate by saying he's a really, really good real-life baseball player. There's absolutely nothing wrong with him, but the batted ball profile does skew a little heavily towards ground balls, and even in the second half, I mean, his numbers were perfectly fine in the second half. I think his WOBA was 383 in the second half. So 392 in the first half. He was above 400 in the first half. That's really not all that different. Yeah, no. He's a phenomenal player, however you want to slice the season up. But second half, a 55.4% ground ball rate. So that's really high.
Yep.
That's the kind of number where you're going to need a 25%, 26%, 28% home run to fly ball ratio to be a 30 home run hitter. Yeah. Not to say he can't do that. He's got immense power. Yeah. And he did it last season. Yeah. That's where his home run to fly ball ratio was. Yeah. But, you know, there's starting to be a couple obstacles in your path to getting him back to 30 home run power, to being a true, because as you said, he's probably only a 4-cat player. Yeah. So if you take away the home runs, now he's like a 3.5 category player.
3.5, and that's, you know, it's a little dicey in the second. I feel, and again, I don't want to say me saying that you'll be disappointed taking him in the second round. Oh, I mean, he's the best young player. Like, it's none of that. Like, I see the skill set. It's just,
there's so many locks in the second round.
There really are. There's so many locks that I feel like maybe potentially you're setting yourself up for disappointment. But if he does go outside of pick 30, and, you know, that's where it's like in 31 NFBC, outside of there is like, fine. I mean, you get yourself a good player with an extremely high ceiling. It's only going to get better, really, in years to come.
Something that was interesting with him, too, and we've seen Bryce Harper struggle with this a little bit across the last couple seasons. And again, it's hard to knock a guy for this in real life, because in real life, his eye and his discipline is such a heavily and highly regarded skill among major league organizations, as it should be. But he is someone who is always willing to take a walk. And sometimes in fantasy, that's a little tough. Yeah. He actually, as a rookie, as a 19-year-old, had the 5th highest walk rate with runners in scoring position of any player in baseball. He walked 23% of his plate appearances with runners in scoring position. And I don't know if that's going to get any better with Ryan Zimmerman and Brian Dozier as his lineup protection.
Not having Harper behind him will hurt him a little bit. And if Harper does sign with another team, I wonder if people do, when we're getting splitting hairs, and maybe I pick somebody else at pick 30 in my third pick.
I mean, look, to that particular stat, like, Mike Trout led the league. Yeah. He walked in a third, 33.8% of those situations, and still got it done. But, you know, if you want to maybe get into the weeds a little bit about Mike Trout, only won 100 RBI season. Right. So these are the things that kind of start to factor in when you're talking about taking a guy maybe over his value. Like you were saying, I can't take him in the second round. I just don't think I can do it. Yeah. But at the same time, I look at the list of outfielders going right behind him.
Name them off.
Bryant, Hoskins, Marte, Bellinger, Springer, Pham. Like, I'm not blown away by that list of guys.
Yeah, I'm not either. And again, you just like I've always been a Springer guy, but
Me
there's
too.
no speed there either. But again, if he stays up at the top of the lineup, he's scoring over 100 runs.
Like Marte's always
runs.
a risk.
Marte is a risk.
I would just say Hoskins I'm most interested in just because of that lineup.
Yeah, that lineup, and I think he could offer a little bit more too, for sure. And Brian, I guess, is a bit of a discount this year as well. I would probably take Brian over him. But again, with those list of names,
I can see how you just want to make sure you get him, right?
and the upside, yeah.
Especially, and you've mentioned this before, and this our mock we did for the Athletic. We mentioned that in a prior podcast. 5 outfielder league.
Oh, yeah, 5.
You don't get an outfielder your first 5 picks. It starts looking real dicey.
Oh yeah, real dicey. I've made the mistakes. Luckily, I've done some drafts in January, and I've kind of not that I've said okay, I'm like avoiding outfielder with my first 3 or 4 picks, but if you do, you're in a real tough spot. You're looking at some borderline guys. Like you're drafting Jackie Bradley Jr. and hoping he can do something for you as like your 4th outfielder. It's rough. So there definitely is some value in taking an outfielder with your 2nd and 3rd pick.
Let's go from the 2nd, 3rd round down to like the 5th, 6th round, because that's where a lot of these names are kind of popping up. Is that sort of dead zone outside the top 50 where we do tend to see a lot of movement from year to year. Maybe the most interesting name for me, just because how I feel about Miguel Andujar is so different than how I thought I would feel about Miguel Andujar, because
you looked into his numbers and it had changed a little bit.
I like him a lot.
Yeah, I didn't know how I felt about him.
I didn't think I was going to.
Yeah,
because we talked about this. He has one trait in particular. Second half of last season, a 43.8% chase rate, which is the second highest in all of baseball. I hate guys who do that because we talked about this before when it came to Jonathan Scope. When you're paying that sort of price, this is right where Scope was going last season.
Exactly.
There's usually a high variance. But he is this rare breed of hitter. I'll get into some of the specifics in a second, but he's this rare breed of hitter who combines aggressiveness with crazy contact skills. He doesn't actually strike out all that much.
No, he doesn't.
I really like him, and I'm surprised I like him as much as I do. So I'm glad to hear that you like him too.
Yeah, I thought maybe when I was looking at Andujar, and I was like, before we looked into some of these guys, I just kind of glossed over him in drafts. I was like, big season, New York Yankees, ballpark, whatever. And I start looking at some of his numbers. It's not like all of his home runs came at home. Like he hit 11 home runs on the road. That's not bad. 297 average, obviously great. I mean, you look at 92 RBIs and 83 runs. If he's going to stick inside that lineup, which is very, very potent, it's not
he's probably only going to hit like 7th, but still.
He's still going to have some RBI opportunities there for him. And then in the second half, I wonder if some of these guys I look at with like, I say career years, but he's just a kid, just a young buck really in terms of resume. And then I see 319 average and 15 home runs in the second half. So it's not like it was balanced. It's not like he had a really, really good second half. And I have to question that, whether what Andujar am I going to get? And it's not like it was brutal in the second half, right? So it was just consistency throughout the whole year. And I mentioned no walks, but doesn't really strike out a whole lot for a guy who likes to swing the bat. So whether the Yankees move on from this guy and get Machado or not, that will hurt him, obviously.
That's really
the issue. Like if you're drafting right now and you draft Andujar and all of a sudden he is, I don't know, he's whoever he is because they make a move to open up, to a signing. Yeah. Maybe that hurts him slightly, but inside this lineup for the Yankees, I'm fine with him.
It was funny too. I consulted a Yankee fan as soon as I kind of came to this realization that I liked Andujar. And the one thing he warned me, similar to what you said, it wasn't his narrative wasn't the Machado thing, but that's obviously at the forefront of everyone's mind. If Machado signs with the Yankees, that crushes Andujar.
It does.
But he was saying they're so all in, the name he's heard a lot around the Yankees and around people who cover the team and people who kind of want to maybe start some stuff is they're all in this season. They're going for it. Every prospect that's not nailed down is on the table. And a name that keeps coming back, kind of crazy, is Nolan Arenado. That they really want to make a run. And if Arenado's if Colorado's struggling, they're going to go for it and try to get Arenado. They're probably going to have to trade Andujar to Colorado to get that done. Now he's in Colorado.
And that would be fine.
I'm perfectly fine with that.
Absolutely. Yeah, that wouldn't change. That would not change his. I mean, yeah, that would be perfectly fine. It's still a great lineup, obviously a great ballpark. And I mean, even again, on the road away from Yankee Stadium, he was fine. He didn't hurt you. Like when you look at some of those Colorado guys, in particular, I know you do the same thing. Like, what do they do? We talk about Goldschmidt. What do they do on the road? Like, obviously a bigger track record, but this guy was fine on the road. So I agree that the Yankees are all in on. I look at Machado and I look at Harper, and usually we see the Yankees and the Red Sox go after these guys, but I look at their outfield and they're kind of just stacked anyways. They don't really need them, but they get an Arenado. There's I would say there's over a 50% chance that he does get moved. But they seem to like him.
That's
why it hasn't happened yet. Exactly.
That's the thing. So it's like, how do you hunt for a replacement when the guy you're trying to replace has been so good? Yeah,
and you're not spending. It's some value there.
So like you said, the second half of his season, 319, 345, 575, which actually tied him for 9th best slugging percentage with the aforementioned Juan Soto in the second half of the season. And his ground ball to fly ball ratio was getting much better in the second half, which led to he had a home run every 16.9 at bats in the second half compared to 26.6 in the first half. So his batted ball profile is getting better. He's aggressive, but he's aggressive with contact skills, which again, I just to point out how rare this combination is, to be a guy who is uber aggressive, but never swings and misses, and also has immense power. Because when I say those first two things, you're like, okay, D. Gordon, Juan Pierre.
Sure.
They do that stuff, sure.
Yeah.
Last season, so I mentioned the second half, 43.7% chase rate, second highest in all of baseball, 256 isolated power, and a 9.8% swinging strike rate. Guys who have put together a 200-plus ISO, a single-digit swinging strike rate, and have been above 40% in chase rate for an entire season. In the last decade, only 2 guys have done it.
Really?
AJ Pierzynski's outlier crazy 2012 season where he hit 28 home runs. That's one of them.
Yeah.
He's always been aggressive.
Yeah.
Robbie Cano is the other guy. And then he never actually did it, but the exact dude who you would think about, like, who's a free swinger who swings at everything, still had immense power, and never strikes out. This guy's kind of Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Vladdy did this almost in 07 and 08. Like, obviously he's not Vladdy.
Right.
But if I can ever put you in a sentence with Vladimir Guerrero, and the comparables are kind I really like this guy. And I think he's someone who's going to fall in drafts because people think he's like such an obvious bust candidate.
Yeah, I know, but when you look deeper into the numbers, it's completely fine. Is somebody picked up off the waiver wire? It's like, it's a little bit of a hot stretch here playing with the Yankees.
Yeah, Yankees,
so just like ride it out until it continues, and it just continued all year. So I mean, that's crazy. That's a crazy stat. Yeah, Vlad swung at everything and hit balls that were bounced. To the plate.
If someone's gonna hit a bouncing ball for a double, Vlad style,
yeah,
my money is on Miguel Andujar. So we'll see how it all kind of.
Yeah, I think I like the price, man. I'm fine with it. And again, I think people are thinking like you, or just bust season. Yeah. Let him fall down another round or two.
He checks off so many boxes of the oh yeah, young kid, kind of came out of nowhere. Yeah. Swings at everything. Like he's gonna. I don't think he's gonna bust this season if he stays in New York. So hopefully he stays in New York.
Yeah, or
Colorado. Moving to Colorado, actually. Maybe Miguel's future teammate, David Dahl. This is about the 3rd straight season we've had to have a David Dahl conversation. It seems like this is the first time in that 3-year run where we can say with some level of definity he is going to be the everyday outfielder for the Colorado Rockies. Gerardo Parra's option was not picked up. He's gone. Carlos Gonzalez, still a free agent, but I don't think he's going to randomly sign in Colorado. Yeah. So this is Dahl's job to lose, and he's being drafted as such. Yeah, he's being drafted as outfielder X for the Colorado Rockies. He's going 70th overall in NFBC drafts. That makes him a top 20 outfielder. I still have my concerns. Where do you kind of see Dahl?
Injury history he's a huge risk. It's slightly earlier than where I want him to go. I feel better if he was my outfielder 3 than my 2. I look at the second half and I understand. In Colorado, you mentioned Parra. You mentioned these guys like Colorado. Obviously, they always for years have blocked kids. Like they've just blocked everybody, whether it's signing Desmond or keeping Cargo around. Like they've just seemed to block all these guys, and it is frustrating. But you're right. Finally, we're going to see it. And I think it's because of his second half, and you realize 45 games, 12 home runs, 272 average, and, on pace really for like a 25, 80, and 80 season with, double digit stolen base. I think he's a 270 hitter. It's just, 271 plate appearances is career high.
Does that blow you away though too?
No,
like when you say like 25, 80, 80, 270.
For my outfielder 2 is where he's going.
I feel like I can find that in round 13.
Absolutely, you can. So it's just the fact that there's been some hype surrounding this guy for years, and that he plays in cores in the lineup. Like and the fact that finally it's like, here you go. Like you're going to be given 500 plus plate appearances if you can stay healthy. It's just. It's a little bit of a risk for me for a guy that I've only seen, again, career high, 271 plate appearances. Yeah. I'm just projecting and that's at best case. Yeah. I'm just saying at best case, this guy is
a lot of the projection models came out with those same numbers.
Yeah, and I've seen some even higher than that. Like I'm being a little bit kind of safe with 25, 80, and 80. I've seen one at like 90 RBIs, 90 plus, like flirting with 30 home runs. Like
maybe. I mean, it's volume stuff, right? Like if he gets 650 plate appearances, which like you said, I think injury history would tell us to be a little cautious about that level of ceiling. But I can see the path because he plays in Colorado. This team's going to score, top 10 in runs.
Games at cores. Yeah.
I get it, but it's cool that these guys are kind of back to back because this is it's almost a disservice to Dahl while really pumping the tires on Andujar one more time. He's the opposite end of that spectrum where he's got a 40% chase rate from last season, but he's also got a 15.4% swinging strike rate. He's got a 71% contact rate. Like we talked about this when it came to Daniel Murphy. Make contact at Coors. That's all you have to do. It's such an easy thing. If you want to be a productive offensive player at Coors, just make contact.
Don't swing and miss.
Just make contact. And I have concerns about whether or not he can do that consistently. And, I mean, when we talk about the plate appearances, obviously it's a good thing that there isn't like a natural platoon partner for him in Colorado. Yeah. They have a lot of left-handed bats. That's always the way they've seemed to do it. He has yet to prove he can hit lefties. Like he really...
Exactly. It's not a big enough sample size for me to go all in on him at this price.
Like I remember some guy yelling at me last season because I was like, he can't hit lefties. He's like, he's only had 60 plate appearances against lefties. How can you say he can't hit lefties? It's like, well, he wasn't great in the minors.
Yeah.
And I don't know. That's the only sample I have.
Exactly.
It's not much bigger now. It's 117 plate appearances, but 30% strikeout rate, a 143 isolated power, 39 WRC plus, and a 0.06 strikeout to walk ratio when he faces a lefty away from Coors. So now when we're talking like he's going to have 150 to 200 plate appearances against lefty pitching outside of the altitude. Colorado. Those are like 2 X's for me right away. Yeah. That's a third of his plate. Well, let's say a quarter.
There's a quarter of his plate. That's probably fair. Yeah. Again, and just the ceiling could be high. Like he could reach a nice point where he can return value, but I think there's just too much risk at pick 70, 69, outfielder 3. Again, you're basically drafting him there as your outfielder 2, and he's going to have to hit. He's going to have to hit the projection that they have for him, whether it's steamer or whatever you have for your mind. Again, I think 25, 80, and 80, but I
think that's fair.
But that's more of an outfielder 3. That's something I feel like I can get a little bit later on. And I'm not even sold that he can hit 270. I'm just...
Yeah, I think there's a lot of swing and miss in his game.
Yeah.
And that usually projects to a guy who's not going to hit. Although his BABIP will be inflated just because everyone always is at Coors Field. There. But yeah, I'm with you. I could see David Dahl hitting 260.
Yeah.
So it's tough for me. It's a hefty price to pay. If he was going like, remember last season he was going like 115, 120,
and that was with like fractured ribs or something.
Yeah, and that was also without a guaranteed roster spot.
We knew he wasn't going to play every day or even make opening day roster, and he was still kind of.
Do you feel like everyone's everyone just wants this to happen so badly?
It might be part of it.
Wanted it to happen for 3 years that. Yeah. Finally, the opportunity's there. We're just like, okay, it's happening. It's like, but what about? No.
Yeah,
it's happening.
It's like Profar for years too. Like, well, I'm taking Profar with my last pick, and then he falls out of bed. And I do too. Like, I mean, people are down on Profar, and another guy, switch teams.
Yeah,
it's
Oakland.
just, that was somebody that just showed us a little bit more than what we've ever seen. I want to see a little bit more from Dahl before I spend this kind of price. And if he does have a season like people are thinking, then fine, I'll spend the maybe 50 pick next year.
I think that's a good way to look at it because I think the question you have to ask yourself is if David Dahl hits his ceiling, maybe not even the ceiling, but if he hits 270, let's say 29 home runs, let's give him 85 runs and 85 RBIs and 8 stolen bases, just for the sake of argument. Where does that player get drafted next season? 50?
Yeah,
55.
I think I think
so. He's already being drafted for the price you're going to pay for his best possible outcome. That's
the bottom line.
That's
for
just
me.
not the way to do it.
Exactly it.
It's not the way to do it. Jesus Aguilar.
Yeah.
Another very interesting conversation. This one I'm a little bit more torn on. His ADP right now is 80th overall. He's first baseman number 7. First half, 413 WOBA, 324 isolated power with a 331 BABIP. Second half, the BABIP drops 50 points. Everything else goes with it. 324 WOBA, 191 isolated power. And maybe most concerning of all, the 30.6% ground ball rate he had in the first half jumps to 41.1%.
It's definitely tail 2 seasons.
And it's tough because he's one of those archetypes where it was out of nowhere. It was so unexpected. It was a great story. And everyone's like, oh, it'll go away in the second half. And then it did. And
it did.
Like, Pat
and I actually made a move for him. It's funny. It worked out for us because we just had so many elite pitchers that we traded Kluber for him. And it like in the second half, he just kind of like went away.
You guys needed home runs.
We needed some
RBIs,
home runs and RBIs. And like I said off the top, we came second. But we definitely felt we got burned in that deal overall. But yeah, you're right. I mean, first half, 24 home runs, 298. Second half, 245, 11 home runs. And I think a hamstring popped up for him. Yep. Sure, he's a big boy. That really hurt him, I'd say. But you know what? For where he is, and again, for first base, I want to get one of those two. And I tend to wait out a little bit more on Olsen.
Well, let's explain that a little bit because I think that was a different show. But I think that was kind of the argument that I was going to make was just, I'm so wanting to get Goldschmidt or Freeman that I probably just don't need to take Aguilar.
Yeah, you don't need to. And if you miss out on one of those guys, he's kind of sitting there. And I tend to wait out a little bit more on Olsen because he's a bit cheaper, and I think he could potentially be.
But even like past pick 110, you've got Joey Gallo, you've got Edwin Encarnacion, you've got Miguel Cabrera. Like Miggy's a whole other can of worms. But like when you think about what's the best case scenario in your head for Jesus Aguilar.
I think he can get back.
Doesn't it look a lot like Edwin Encarnacion?
Yeah, maybe.
He's younger,
I don't know. I don't know how you feel about Edwin. That's a good conversation on its own too. Probably both 260 hitters. Maybe Edwin slightly below. I don't even know if Edwin can get back to 260. I almost see him as like a 240
probably 240,
guy. Yeah. I don't know if Edwin is fully healthy, and I think there's some major question marks. But him going to Seattle. I don't obviously love the ballpark as much. I don't think he can get to 35. I think Aguilar can get to 35, and I think where he hits in that lineup, and I think it's a great lineup in Milwaukee.
Great ballpark, too.
Great ballpark. You got two guys in Yelich and Kane who are getting on base consistently. I feel like he could repeat some of his numbers. Like he doesn't... The average, I said, I got down here 260, 35 repeatable, walks 10% of the time, not going to kill you on base percentage, maybe help you a little bit more there. But 100 RBIs, I think, is definitely doable hitting that cleanup spot. I think there could be some regression, but I do feel like, Garion, we're going to get a similar season. I really do. I feel like 30 home runs is a lock for him. But again, the first base position, it's fairly weak. So if you want to wait it out, like I said, Olsen, I'm not so much sold on Edwin, but maybe you're different. I think just the power inside that lineup. I think he's got legit power. I mean, 2016 AAA hit 30 home runs.
He does. That was always the calling
Crushed
card.
the ball.
And I know your boy Joe Pisapia.
Yeah.
This is one of his big.
It was one of his big things in the black book. And that's one of the reasons
too was he showed immense power.
He showed
and the argument was if he gets a chance
in Milwaukee,
why wouldn't he do it?
Right. And they brought in a bunch of guys and he was playing every day. And for the most part, he was when they brought in like Scope and
he was still
pretty much playing every day. But it was kind of taken away from like the everyday cleanup role that he had. It was a little bit of Shaw was sprinkled in. And
do you worry about that at all though? Like because he's a guy who doesn't have a ton of name value. Yeah. Because he's a guy who the organization itself isn't heavily invested in.
Yeah.
If he gets off to a slow start, like let's say if he starts
how he finishes, that's concerning. Yeah.
Do you think he gets enough time to turn it around, or do they bring in a left-handed bat and now he's a platoon hitter again?
That's definitely possible. It's something I think they'll give him like a solid.
I think it would have to take a pretty significant.
Yeah, for sure. But I think for some of the patience that I've seen that I saw from him last year, and some of the power, and again just hitting in the meat of that lineup in that ballpark, I'm kind of willing to spend that price around 76, but at the same time, like I am a little bit torn in the fact that I wouldn't be shocked if he just scales it back. His numbers scale back just a little bit, and then you're looking at, I spent that 6th round pick on 35 and 100, and I'm not going to get it. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think He's not someone I'm targeting.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't go so far as to say like he's a bust.
Yeah.
I just think where he's positioned within his own position, within the ranks of his own position, like I said, I'd rather attack it off the top. I want to leave the second round with either Goldschmidt or Freeman on my team. And if I don't get that, I think I'm going to sit there and just say, I think there's an maybe not 80. I think there's a 60 to 65% chance Edwin is just as good as Aguilar by the end of the season. I think if you want to just swallow the pill that is Joey Gallo's average, I think Gallo's going to hit more home runs than him.
Yeah,
I think I could guarantee Gallo's going to hit more home runs than him.
I would agree with that too.
So there's ways to build this up. And I would just say the ground ball thing is probably the most concerning thing to me because even, I always talk about Christian Yelich. He's my poster child for ground ball rate. But Yelich at least is the type of hitter who, if he hits a ground ball, he's still hitting like 320, 330 on ground balls. Yeah. Aguilar last season hit 197 on ground balls.
He's not getting to first.
No, he's not getting to first. Yeah. So he's got to get some elevation. And if that trend continues, that's probably the most.
I think a lot of people are probably listening to us who have to make that tough decision because Aguilar was just a free agent pickup, and I don't know
because we've already got
leagues. Yeah. But you're playing in keeper leagues and whatever your setting is. I know I have to make a couple tough decisions. We mentioned Joe Pisapia. I'm in his CBS home league, and it was an auction. I think I grabbed Aguilar for $5. Like it's going to cost me $6 this year. That's not a decision I have to make. I'm just going to take them.
I think if you have him at like that immense value, I think it's fine.
Yeah, you have that kind of value, but and it's okay if he suffers a little bit of a bust at there. But if you're keeping him for like,
if it's just like you have 5 keepers, that's it. Yeah, no value attributed. That's a tough one for me.
Absolutely, for sure.
One that probably isn't as tough. I thought this was going to be a weird one for me, but German Marquez. I think he was just so good last season. I'm willing to be like, he's a top 100 player.
Yeah.
And, there's going to be some people that point to the 4.74 ERA he had at home, but that was so front weighted to the start of the season.
Yeah, rough first little bit.
Very rough. Very rough. Yeah. And sometimes, especially with pitchers, the thing I look for is like, okay, if 2 months into the season, all of a sudden you were a completely different guy, I need something tangible to have happened. Whether that's, he talked with the pitching coach and he adjusted his positioning on the mat, like something. I need something. And going through his numbers, if you go from June on, entering June, his slider usage was at 12%. From that point on, it was up around 22%. His
slider's legit.
And his slider is crazy
very,
good.
Very good.
So if we want to just say that from that point on, he started using his slider more, what did he do then at Coors? And it was in the second half, he had a 1.74 ERA with a 1.78 FIP at Coors Field. Yeah. And we always say, what's the way to survive as a pitcher at Coors? Don't allow contact. And if you do, ground ball. 38% strikeout rate, 53% ground ball rate.
Yeah, phenomenal stuff. His final 113 innings, 2.47 ERA, 33 strike percentage. I got down here slider legit. Absolutely legit. I remember watching a game at Coors against Colorado. He was striking everybody out. 10K per 9. Ground ball rates sitting around 47%. Even better, as you mentioned, in the second half at Coors. That's what you want. Yeah, you look at the splits. 2.95 ERA on the road, 4.74 at home. But I mean, the first part of the season for him was just so rough. And I mean, people will shy away from this guy because he pitches at Coors. But I still think he has upside to be a top 25 pitcher, top 20 pitcher. And, like if you're playing in weekly lock leagues, you don't need to play him in 2 starts in Colorado against whoever it is.
If the Dodgers are coming to town, maybe
you don't need to. But he can still pass the test because we've already seen it. So, I'm in on him. Marquez is a pitcher that, I feel will slide down because of that Coors factor. And you just had some of the brilliant numbers. And his slider is when you have a pitch like that, because look at all those Colorado pitchers in years past, like they haven't had that pitch.
Yeah, he's not Jeff Francis.
Right. Francis, what an unbelievable season he had, or Jimenez, what Baldo had one.
Yeah, Baldo too.
But I mean, you have to have that one put out pitch, keep the ball on the ground. He's got it. So
his curve's pretty good too.
His curve is pretty good.
Here's the thing with Marquez too that I think is interesting to talk about. I know one of Pat's favorite things to say when he talks about fantasy baseball is you can be good at fantasy baseball and you can play fantasy baseball without actually having to watch baseball. And I think that's true. Like I can talk about players that I haven't watched that week. Like you can look at the numbers and kind of see what happened. Marquez, I think, is someone who, if you really want to buy into where his ADP is, which is right now 82.4 in NFBC leagues, he's SP25, just watch him pitch. Because from a DFS perspective, I remember streaming this guy in like a May game, and he ended up getting lit.
Mm-hmm.
But you watch him pitch and you go, why aren't you better? Because everything you throw is absolute filth. Like, it's not like when people who are drafting J Happ a couple picks after Marquez, and you're like, I feel best about not watching J Happ go about getting his fantasy. Like, he's going to get you the numbers, but you might not love watching him do
sweat
it.
Out.
Marquez, he passes the eye test, which is not something we talk about a lot, but
I think if this guy wasn't at Coors, I mean, we're talking about him as 15, 20 picks higher as a borderline top 20 pitcher. I think maybe
he'd be right there with like Corbin.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, another year of some solid numbers at home, perhaps, like in the second half, like he showed. Maybe this time next year, we're talking about Coors doesn't matter. And top 20 pitcher.
One really interesting conversation I wanted to have is Mitch Haniger, because, so far the theme of every player we've talked about is maybe not even necessarily the youngest guy, although we started as young as you can get on the spectrum with Juan Soto, but everyone's coming off a career best year. Yeah. There's no way you can look at the numbers and go, that guy didn't get substantially better. So the conversation is always, can they stay at that level? How precipitous is the fall off? Like, those are the things we kind of deal with. Haniger is really interesting. He was going as pick 212 in 2018. Now he's pick 86.3 in NFBC drafts. That's outfielder 23. Was really good last season. There's nothing I could say to knock him, aside from a lot of the power came in April and then seemed to tail off.
Yeah, he had a very, very strong start.
Every 9.7 at bats in April, that went down to 31.2 in the second half. But he got better in August and September. So he kind of bookended his season, which is nice to see a player round back into form. And he got the plate appearances, which is super important.
Oh, yeah.
Should definitely have them again.
Yeah.
But if you look at the ratios from 2017 to 2018, 2017 is a 282 hitter. 2018 is a 285 hitter. 2017, a 352 OBP. 2018, a 366 OBP. 2017, a 491 slugging. 2018, 493 slugging. I'm not knocking him because it's nice to see some consistency. It's nice to kind of know what you have in a guy. But it's weird. You're not buying upside here.
No, you're not.
You're almost buying set in stone production. Yeah. So I just wanted to ask you, do you think Haniger is going to get better, or is this just who Mitch Haniger is?
Yeah, I don't think he's going to get better. I kind of say the same thing with like Segura. Like, he's not the same player as Segura, and obviously doesn't have that resume, but you kind of know what you're getting here now with Haniger. You're probably going to get, like you said, a 280 average. Maybe he chips in with 160 combined runs and RBIs and hits 25 home runs. Maybe he can get to 10 stolen bases.
Which sounds a lot like what are maybe David Dahl can do this.
Right.
Just take the definite thing 15 picks later.
Exactly. And again, I have here outfielder 3, but you're not drafting him as an outfielder 3. You're pretty much drafting him to be your 2. And I want my 2 to have a ceiling.
Yeah.
I want him to have a high ceiling and that he can get to. And I don't know. And again, the lineup in Seattle is a little bit more watered down slightly. But I mean, safe, you really know what you're getting. I mean, there's a reason he was on everybody's sleeper radar last season. Like, injuries had really slowed him down for the past couple of years, and he hadn't been able to get to a groove. But yeah, I think he's a terrific hitter. I think he's got a good eye. He's got some pop in his bat, but I know what I'm going to get from him. And if I don't get that, I'm bummed.
Yeah.
I'm bummed on draft day.
I think you're going to get it, though. Swing rate, 42%, 41.8%. Fly ball rate, 36.7%, 36.3. He's
going to have that outlier year this year where he's no good.
You know who I think he is? Or who, if he does this again, he sort of strangely becomes like the Hunter Pence of this generation.
Okay.
Which doesn't sound like a ringing endorsement, but Hunter Pence, you knew exactly what you were getting every single time you drafted him. And I agree with you. I don't want to take Mitch Haniger. Like, he's not a target for me at pick 85. But Haniger's the kind of guy who, if people as a consensus kind of say, like, I want something sexier.
And they will.
And he drops to pick 100.
And he will.
You know exactly, like,
you're
not missing. You're not missing if you take Mitch Haniger at pick 100.
Yeah.
Like, if you've got a little bit more risk at the top end of your board, maybe you took Juan Soto as your, second round pick. And he has a little risk there.
Yeah.
Mitch Haniger is the perfect complement to those types of players.
I agree. I mean, you look at Dahl and you look 13 picks in between another round.
And Dahl, there's going to be someone in some draft somewhere where Mitch Haniger goes ahead of David Dahl. I would be shocked if you're in your draft room and Mitch Haniger's off the board before David Dahl.
Yeah, same.
And I would much rather have Haniger at whatever price he's going after David Dahl.
Yeah, there's some more safety there.
Yeah. Jonathan Villar, also a really fun conversation as we kind of get closer and closer to the end of the top 100 for the NFBC ADP as it stands in early February. VR is just interesting because it's a pattern now. So we all got burned 2 seasons ago.
Not this guy, bud. Not this guy.
But when we got burned by VR, he was like a top 20 pick.
Yeah,
maybe top 30.
He was going in the end of second, early third.
Now he's like pick 90.
And I'm perfectly fine. I'm on board with VR. Absolutely. 2016, I remember we were working together. I remember having this conversation with you as somebody, 19 home runs, 62 stolen bases. 62. The great lineup.
I think he hit like 290 that season.
290. We were looking at each other like, okay, the average is going to come down a little bit, but it's still a good ballpark. We know maybe the average comes down 30 to 40 points. It maybe only steals 40 bags, things like that. But it's somebody who just struck out a lot at that point, and that was part of it for me. Is like I just don't want to spend that on the one season. But now we get a glimpse of really like that was kind of close to what he can do. Mm-hmm. Like maybe not 60 stolen bases, but 21 stolen bases in 54 games at Baltimore, 35 overall. He's got an everyday role with the Orioles. It's a great ballpark, hitter-friendly ballpark. It's not going to be a great lineup, but he's going to be in probably near the top of it every single day. So I look at a guy that can hit 15 bombs and steal me 40 bags. And for where he's going around that pick and people who are chasing speed right off the hop of all their drafts, like this is somebody that is going to be a target of mine that I am going to have no problem plugging in. If he hits 250, fine.
That's found money if he hits 250.
If he hits 250, I'll take that every day. But this is somebody that, again, I think can hit 15 in that ballpark. He was great with Baltimore.
Yeah, he was really good. Yeah. And I've mentioned Derek Carty's projection system in previous podcasts. The bat has him at 574 plate appearances, which could be a little light. Yeah. Because there's no one knocking down that door to steal his job and his at bats. 16 home runs, 34 steals. That's not even that like low. Impressive a projection, but if he hits that, that's value.
Yeah, that's value.
He's going to bring back value.
And I think 90. He can do a little bit better than that.
I agree with you. Yeah. I think the average is a huge variance. He could hit 220. Like there's no guarantees when it comes to Jonathan Villar's batting average. Yeah. But you go back and you look at where he was hitting in that lineup after he was traded to Baltimore. And that was the whole thing. Like, sure, he was a bust that year. He was a 3rd round pick. But if he had gotten his plate appearances, that was the issue. It's just there's too many guys in Milwaukee. He just couldn't get consistent plate appearances. When he got to Baltimore, he never took consecutive days off. No. And he hit 1st, 2nd, or 3rd in every game he played.
He was a DFS darling, man, on DraftKings. He was super cheap every single time. He was like 2-3, 2-4, 2-6. Like it was just a guy that I just plugged into that lineup, and that not only that ballpark, but that whole division is hitter friendly. So yeah, I mean, I look at Mondesi, and it's very similar. I talk with these two guys. Like, I don't want to spend this price on Mondesi this year. I'll spend it next year. And it'll be a little bit cheaper. And this is what we're getting here with VR.
That's true. If Mondesi rolled into next season with an ADP of 85, I'd be like, I can see this.
I'm taking it. Yeah.
The only things I can think of aside from the batting average is cratering that could be possible red flags are just in the weird Orioles kind of lineup construct and roster construct they have now. They took 2 middle infielders as Rule 5 players. So they've got Drew Jackson and Richie Merton. They both have to keep on the 25-man roster for the entirety of the season. Like I said, they both play middle infield positions. Mm-hmm. They're both naturally shortstops, so you would assume that doesn't affect VR too much at second base. And they're probably going to want to hide these guys as much as they can. Yeah. But they're going to have other middle infielders, young guys, who they might want to get at bats at some point.
Yeah,
so maybe that factors in.
Maybe he gets dealt. Maybe not somebody that they probably move on from.
He's got 1 year of arbitration left. Okay. So I feel like if he has a really good start to the season, which would be great from a fantasy perspective,
for sure,
it's probably in Baltimore's best interest to move him, because Baltimore is not going to be good next season.
Right.
And after that, they're probably not going to re-sign VR anyway. So he is a trade candidate.
Yeah, you sell high just like worrisome. Baltimore probably will. Yeah.
So those are the only concerns, though. Yeah. I'm with you. I love VR this season. Yeah. Last guy, and I saved him for last for a reason, because when we gave away some DK dollars on one of our previous shows, we asked for everyone's top sleeper pitcher for 2019. Someone said Zack Wheeler. Okay. I'm just here to break it to you. Zack Wheeler can't be a sleeper starting pitcher. I'm with you, though. I like Zack Wheeler. Yeah. I like him a lot. But his ADP, 94.5. So we've talked about Patrick Corbin in a previous podcast. He talked about German Marquez, talked a little bit about Trevor Bauer. Wheeler was the other guy, former very heralded prospect who finally broke out in 2018, is now SP 27, but his second half was fantastic. 2.53 FIP. It was like if you saw a Mets box score and it was scoreless through 6 innings, as much as your first inclination would be, oh, I guess Jacob deGrom is pitching tonight. It was usually Zack Wheeler.
Yeah.
He was so good. But the question I kind of want to ask is, despite the success, and despite his arsenal, like he has a big fastball.
Oh, it's one of the best fastballs in the game, actually.
He doesn't really have that second pitch like Marquez has. Marquez actually has 2 pitches. He was one of 21 starting pitchers last season to have 2 pitches with a 17% plus whiff rate. So again, Marquez, great.
Oh yeah.
Love Marquez.
Draft him.
Wheeler doesn't really have that strikeout pitch. And that's not to say he can't strike batters out.
He had a
like,
splitter, but it wasn't, I think it's just a little bit of the time he used it. Yeah.
His strikeout rate was still hovering around like 23-24%, which is fine. But across the last 3-4 years in Major League Baseball, the average strikeout rate has gone from like 19% to 21%. So everyone's kind of striking out 8 batters per 9.
We'll just move the mound back then.
just move it back.
Just flatten it, move it back.
But does Wheeler do enough for you as a strikeout artist for you to say like...
That's a good cue.
Because he kind of looks... He's almost comparable to Mitch Haniger for me. Like, I think he's a really safe guy. I think he's going to get you the numbers that you want to get. Wins could be a little weird with the Mets, but I think if he finished the season with like a 3.40 ERA, if he pitches 200 innings, I'd say he probably maybe gets 200 strikeouts, but not more than that.
No.
Is that enough for you? Because there's this weird tier of like Miles Mikolas, Zack Wheeler, and David Price, and none of those guys are strikeout artists.
Yeah, you're right. Like Mikolas, I don't want any part of at all. What's he going to give me? A 6K per 9? I don't want any part of that. At least 9 is fine, and I think there's more risk with Price. Although obviously he was fine in the postseason, he's great, but I'm not completely buying into what he can do for me next year. But for Wheeler, I think this is a fair price. I think he should even go a little bit earlier for somebody who likes to target my pitchers in around this area. He's somebody that I've already drafted a few times. I don't know if he's as good as the second half, but he has shown spurts, like even before the Tommy John, like before all those injuries, go back to 2014, 185 innings, 9K per 9. Like the ERA was 3.5. Like that's fine. That's solid, right?
Even his first half, like we talk about how crazy good the second half was. His first half was fine.
Yeah, it was fine.
3.75 FIP. Like he was pitching well.
Yeah,
so this didn't come out of nowhere.
1.68 ERA in the second half, just churning out quality start after quality start, going to the 6th and 7th I was wondering why the Mets weren't flipping this guy, to be honest. I said trade this guy, and they didn't want to give up on him because of the pedigree, because of the prospect, because of what he was doing, and I think it was fair. I think it's fine. Like there are some guys in around that range you want to look for strikeout upside. 9K per 9 is, as you mentioned, it's not elite.
You can probably find it later though.
You can probably find it later
with
some guys. I think he's not going to kill you with ratios. I'm in on him, man. I've always been a big Wheeler guy. I know I keep saying that I'm in on him. I said that a lot with a lot of guys, but Wheeler is probably the one that I'm most excited. Marquez, obviously, but one I'm going to get a couple rounds later. So I think it's fair for that point, and won't kill you with the ratios. The walks are a little bit of an issue, and they have been. But
that's okay. You live with that a little bit.
You live with that, yeah.
It's we're almost kind of ending on a whimper here because I agree with you. I think Wheeler, of all the guys we talked about, Haniger kind of in this class too. I think he just falls into this sort of boring area. Like we want a hot take, but I think he's being drafted properly.
Yeah.
I think he's someone who has a very high floor.
Yeah.
And I think he's someone who better than not has a chance better to not than bring back SP2 value.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to be an SP1.
No.
But I think he's someone who's just pretty safe, pretty set in stone. His slider, not to the caliber of Marquez, not to the caliber of Corbin, but he's a right-handed pitcher who has neutralized right-handed bats. And that's really well.
That's key. That's a big positive. Thing. That's a hot take in its own.
Last season, 245 WOBA for right-handed bats, 29.4% soft contact rate.
Yeah.
Righties only hit to a 254 slugging percentage off his slider.
That's a positive.
It's a really good
righties.
Pitch.
Absolutely.
He's not going to strike out a ton of guys with it, but still, a strikeout per inning used to be a big thing. It's weird. Like I feel like I'm bagging on him too much
because it's 8K per 9 or whatever. But
I just think Wheeler he's properly valued.
Yeah.
And I think if you need an SP2, if you need a guy who's going as an SP3 to be your SP2, I think Wheeler's a really good candidate.
And I think for me, like I like to leave my draft with a top 10, maybe 2 top 20 starting pitchers. I get to where Wheeler gets drafted and he's usually my 4th. And I'm just like, okay, I'm fine with that.
And I like him a lot more than Mikolas and Price. I'll say that much too.
Oh, me too. Like,
so in that tier, he's the clear guy.
I would agree with that. I'm not in on Mikolas at all.
It's tough.
Yeah.
He was towards the end of last season.
Pitch would be fine.
He was a sneaky guy I like to stack against in DFS because he's not great against lefties.
A lot of contact too.
Why don't you tell the people what's going on at The Athletic? I know we got the draft kits out, but it's always kind of coming at people.
Yeah, always. I mean, you took part in a mock we did, The Athletic. That might be up there already on the website, a little breakdown. And yeah, we're coming out in waves of draft guides. So we'll have like position previews first. We'll have all the, the sleepers and busts, but we're really looking into it, stats that matter. We have just a great crew of guys at The Athletic, some really smart minds, smart pitcher minds. So just look for that. It'll be... From here on out, there'll be lots of information at The Athletic. Rankings can be found there and at Fantrax and be adjusting them as we go. But kind of getting away from rankings, just going into tiers.
Yeah.
I like that a little bit more for baseball.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So again, follow Chris on Twitter at Chris Meaney. Definitely subscribe to The Athletic. Because as we've talked about before, you're not... For $2, $3
you're getting
a month,
everything.
You're not just getting the baseball package. You're getting everything.
Getting it all, everything.
So yeah, definitely make sure to do that. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm at Garion Thorne. You can follow my work at DK Playbook primarily, but follow my Twitter account. I tend to roam around a little bit. Also, if you guys want to get in on that aforementioned draw for $20 DK, all you have to do is first like this video, then go to the comment section, leave your DK handle in your comment, and tell us which player you trust the least of these sort of pop-up risers in terms of ADP. Maybe you don't like a couple Colorado players, or maybe you do like a couple Colorado players. I don't know. Tell us in the comments section. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Pat Mayo Experience. I want to thank Chris one more time for joining us. I want to thank you guys for watching and sticking around. We'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!